stream time videos. So let's work on another problem. This time what I want to work on is the thing where if I build a second time in a row, it crashes. So, for instance, if I build once, it does this. If I hit build again, what? That worked. Maybe we fixed the bug that was causing this crash when we fixed the bug that was causing the other crash. Oh god, I hate debugging when you are doing something complicated enough that it can lose like sort of one-to-one bug to symptom, like genotypical to phenotypical bugs, and the mapping there is not one-to-one. And when you have one genobug that expresses itself as several phenobugs, and then you have all those phenobugs disappear when you solve the first phenobug in the cluster, that's very frustrating. I thought I launched 4coder correctly. Oh, no. This is the... I did launch 4coder correctly. This is the test one. Okay, so... Okay, let's try a different test. So let's try... meow hash build again. Yeah, okay, this seems super fixed. Build again. What if I open up one of these files and edit it? What if I change... What if I change meow hash from over here? Save, close, go back to my project, and, well, it says that it needs to be reopened, but what if I just build again? Okay, yes, whatever the bug was, it's fixed. Okay, great. So the problem that creates for me is that was the plan for the stream. Coming into it, the plan was to fix that bug, and that phenobug has already been fixed. Or rather, I should say the genobug that was creating that phenobug has been fixed, but the phenobug never got investigated, so that's just a guess. Yeah, I know I can't. This is the thing that bothers me, is I'm not sure how to go about figuring out what was causing it when it's not happening anymore in my current code base. I could revert my changes and just check that out. I suppose that wouldn't be a horrible plan. So let's do that. Alright, now I need to do some sort of git magic that takes the commit that I have now and goes back one commit and then lets me come back to this one later. I think that's a checkout. Now what I need to do is I need to know how to check out the previous commit and then how to check out this commit again. If the problem here is if I do git log, oh, I remember what I did. I have a script for that. Perfect. Okay. Git checkout. (09CE 4060 EAD). That should be enough. There we go. Alright, this has been fun, but I want to stand up. Boo. Okay. Make a test branch. None of that sounds easier to me. I don't know how to make a test branch and then how to reset that branch to other things. If you're going to tell me what to do in Git, literally send me the Git commands, because I have no idea how anything works. I mean, my understanding is that there's like a chain of diffs and that they kind of form like some kind of weird graph or something that is mostly tree-like, but then merges. Okay, so now what I should be able to do is run this. This is the broken version that I'm running as my main. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to meow hash. We're going to build. And we're going to build again. Now that's not even crashing. You know what? It's because I haven't rebuilt the code yet. Okay. I see. Yeah. Well, no problem then. I'm not really a Git expert, so I can't just create a branch and do the right thing on it. It's actually like the worst thing you could tell me to do to make something simpler is to start by make a branch. Because I've never made a branch and then later been like, oh, that really worked out. Happy about the branch decision that I made. Doesn't happen. Build once. Build twice. Okay, I'm not getting the bug. Whatever the bug was, I might not have fixed it because I'm running the old code now and I'm still not getting any crashes. Just double check. So this one definitely has the bug. Okay, so that is just not an example of the bug. Recursive. What if I just have these open? No, that still doesn't do it. And what if I hit F1, build my project, and build it again? Okay, so things don't crash anymore? Sorry, the text is small. I know I should do this. Alright, we're trying to get this version to crash because if this version definitely has the bug. So I build it. I'm going to introduce file track scratch, the thing we've actually already finished, but I'm introducing it again. That didn't cause the problem. I have no idea where that crash was coming from. I don't know where the bug is anymore. There it is. There it is. Okay, so you have to do it, you have to be more persistent. It's not necessarily the second time, it's just eventually it happens. Let's take a look at this then. Load the project. There's something really fun about having gigantic text. No, I have not looked at the SSHFS thing yet. That might be something on my to-do list for this weekend. I'm trying to kind of look at that kind of shit. Like, I'm trying to look at, oh, I can't save files in these cases. I'm trying to look at file notifications get messed up in these cases. I'm trying to look at crash bugs that happen for, like, oh, I opened up this particular file and the weird, like, binary characters in it didn't. The binary, it's a binary file and opening it up crashes or something like that. Like, I want to track down as many of those as possible, so. Right, the bug might not be fixed in the newest commit, but I'm going to try to figure out what it was in this commit by, now that I've loaded the project, I'm just going to, you get right out of here. I'm just going to keep running the build until it fails. It was after metadata generator that it failed last time. Like, it was during it, I guess I should say. After it was printed, but before the next thing was printed. So it doesn't have to anything to do with the output file problem. Not sure, not sure, not sure. Yeah, out of water now. Okay, so this isn't really working out. Jim asks, where in the code do you end up when you debug the crash? Do not know the answer to that question yet. Have not had a chance to debug the crash on a version with debug symbols. Like, I've only gotten the crash on the release version of the code I'm running here. You know, now that I have a VM, maybe I should just start doing my Linux debugging on stream. I've never done it before, but why don't we try to make that our next plan after I've tracked down this disappearing bug. Okay. We need to up the ante, make it more likely to happen. It usually happens when I was intentionally making changes Gareth Hubble asks, any ideas for a simple way to learn how to write customizations for the newer builds of 4coder, and can I do it on Linux and Windows and share the source code between them? Yeah, so Jim has just posted the gold standard introduction to writing a customization layer. If you are familiar with C, that's the only prerequisite really for it to make sense. If you don't know your C programming yet, then that will barely help. And the answer to the other question is yes. You can write code. Your customization code basically gets written to the 4coder API directly, and anything that you write to the 4coder API will work on Linux, Windows, and Mac. It'll work on Mac, kind of, because the Mac system makes it hard on me. But that doesn't do anything to prevent you from using Windows and Linux specific things. So like if you do like include windows.h in your customization, then of course that won't compile on Linux. Alright, so I can't get it to happen when the debugger is attached. I can't get it to happen with debug symbols, even with the debugger detached. I can only get it to happen. I wonder if I'm not on the right commit. Maybe I actually fixed this problem in a previous commit and I'm not even on that one yet. I could go back another step. Maybe it's fixed in this version, and the version I'm actually running live is even older than this. So let's try that. Wait, how do I check out the commit from earlier? 6E37 0C5. So maybe that's this 9AD51C41 that I want. Okay, so Gary Johansson asks, I have a question if you don't mind. Have you thought of adding the language server protocol to 4coder for a poor man's IntelliSense? Yeah. So the language server protocol is kind of cool. It's the part of the problem that it's solving that I like is that I would like to have solved is another example of something I was talking about in the previous stream of like an n times m number of algorithms you would have to write and breaking that down into endpoint, like just implementing something on each of the endpoints and having a single intermediate data format that allows complete sort of composition. And the way it works is for anyone who's watching this who doesn't know how the language server protocol thing works, the idea is your editor implements one end of this system. Your language server implements the other end of the system. They run in two separate processes, and they are connected to each other via a pipe, and they can talk to each other, or via a socket or something. They send messages back and forth. And then what can happen is the editor can say something like, send a request for a particular chunk of code to be analyzed, and that's sort of in preparation of things you'll want to know about it later, and then later you can query things about it, right? Roughly speaking. And so what this means is if I'm in the position of writing an editor like 4coder, I don't have to write the language parsing tools for my editor for all languages. I just have to write the generic language server protocol editor end, and then any language that has that server protocol implemented already will hook up with my editor and work. Conversely, if I'm in a language community and I see all these editors that I want my language to be possible to work on in those editors, same problem. I don't want to write the language a special mode in each editor for my language. I just want to write one thing that describes my language and have that hook up with the other side. So that part of it is very cool. I'm not super excited about introducing the whole like multi-process asynchronous architecture into 4coder right now. So I wish it had like the design decision to do the multi-process thing has two benefits. One is isolation of failures, which is only a benefit because operating systems don't give us a good way to do isolation of failures within a process without doing a lot of our work, the work ourselves. Especially if I'm calling to untrusted code that isn't mine necessarily, and I want to be I can't guarantee the quality of that code at all. It's very hard. I could write an exception handler that like will do like like a Windows style structured exception handling or signal handlers for a Linux sort of environment where I want to catch null pointer dereferences and stuff like that. Um, but there's still the question of how you're going to clean up the resources in there, and how are you going to guarantee that all the resources they acquired, you are aware of, that you're aware of all those resources. It's not clear that that's ever going to be possible without the operating system helping you or something, or a different language. Um, then the other thing that you get from the multi-process thing is that the two processes can be in completely different languages, and since they're sending messages back and forth, all that is required is that both languages can serialize information to those sockets. And now me and my language community, I can write my language server protocol in my language, which is probably what I want to do. And in my editor community, whatever language I happen to have written my editor in, I can just use that to write that end, and then they'll still all hook up. So those parts are all cool. It's just that I don't really want to introduce a fundamental multi-process architecture all the way into 4coder. I would much rather if they had a two-layer system where there was a API version that was just like, look, you're giving up the isolation of processes, you're trusting the other side to be good, and if they crash, you're going to crash. And you're forcing whatever side they're in to be someone who can compile to native, or at least can create a DLL that you can call into somehow, which I guess is the same thing as compiling to native. Anyway, point is, if you force that, then you might exclude certain languages that are on both sides of the equation. So then after that, you can write a layer on top of that that's like the thing that implements the API on both sides using a socket, right? And then those languages that got left out by the C API style thing are then roped in with that. I would have much less trouble with this if I only had to implement the C API thing for now, because that doesn't throw as much of a monkey wrench into the architecture. Yeah. So, yeah. I think the language server protocol is ultimately something we want. I just think that they chose the abstractions. When you set out to build something that is a good idea, it's not good enough that your idea of what you're solving is a useful problem to solve, because if it's a pretty useful problem to solve, the worst implementation will still last. For instance, the internet. The World Wide Web is this. So you should really take those things more seriously and like be very cautious on the upfront side of the problem. Anyway, so right now we're checked out right here. I still haven't been able to repro my bug. I'm going to check out (9AD5(1)C41). Now I'm going to build. And we're going to see if that can repro the problem. I'm still not even recreating the bug, and I know that this one is busted, so whatever's happening here, I don't really know what to say about it. Hey, there it goes. Wait a minute. Okay, this is weird. So it looks like the same bug. It looks like it's still being caused by the fact that there's an unprotected, doubly used global variable. That looks like the main problem, because if you look right here, this should have returned something, because the scratch says position is 0, says it's got that much space. All it was asked to allocate was 2 times that much space, which should have been about 65,000, and it says it has 131,000, so it has enough, and it just didn't give me back a pointer at all. What I think that means is that when this was happening, Scratch looked different, and since it can be edited from both threads, it's been cleared to 0 since then. The position has. So, the other weird thing, though, is why can both of these things be happening simultaneously anyway? Okay, that's the next statement to execute. So, it's entering that critical section now. Yeah, like this should definitely have at least 104 pushed on it. So the fact that that's cleared to 0, I'm not sure who did that. But it's got to be someone. It's got to be main thread, I think. And the hard part about that is we don't really know where main thread has been since the last time this code got a chance to run. For all we know, font system init, font data, clipboard contents. Okay, if read clipboard contents got called, then it could have done the clear. says you probably need to make changes. I thought the crash happened almost instantly. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm confused about. When I was trying to write code, it was crashing all the time. Also, yes, I know that the Visual Studio windows don't get shown. I don't know how to fix that. Okay, so I mean, this is the same bug that we fixed, is what I can say for sure. I can say for sure that this crash is happening right on the same line with the exact same symptoms of failure that it had on the other case, the one where the VM was changing things and causing crashes. So basically, wait, buffer does not equal 0 in this case. This is different. So Scratch got cleared to 0. Scratch's position is 0, which is wrong. But the buffer is non-zero because we couldn't get to here if the buffer was 0. Okay. But this one can still fail. That's right. Okay, so my best guess, I think, there's no clipboard string, so it wasn't reading a clipboard string. There's no keys. There's literally nothing remarkable about this frame. Alright, I want to look for all locations where shared vars shows up. It could also be caused by any of these, right? If any of these get started on the main thread and then that's what triggers it. It's the saving the files. So when I was just spamming rebuilds, it wasn't causing a problem because I wasn't editing the file. When I did edit the file, it didn't guarantee that it would happen because it's a race condition basically. If it happens to fail to reach this part where it begins a temp, or if it gets past the end temp in one of the threads before it does the same, starts in the section in the other thread, or after, then it doesn't show up. So having lots of dirty files makes it much more likely to see this. I bet that's the situation. Okay, so if I wanted to test that, what would I do? Guess I should go to meow hash. That does not appear to be enough to cause the problem. By the way, while we're here, let's just looking for new things to crash me since I'm getting bored of this thing not crashing. Found one. Okay. Let's work on that instead, because kind of hitting a dead end with this thing. So I think that the bug is fixed. I'm quite confident at this point that the line where the crash was happening is very indicative of a race condition that we fixed in the most recent commit. 6E370C5. It could actually require changes in multiple files. That's totally possible. We'll get back to this, I promise. I just don't want to go down that hole for so long that I go crazy. I can't do it. We'll come back to it. Okay. So for this one, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to take... Uh-oh. Forgot about that part of the bug. We're going to take meow example. We're going to rename file query meow example.cpp, and now it doesn't crash. Rename file query meow example.cpp. Now it does crash. Super weird. Okay, let's try and look at it here. Alright, give me meow example, rename file query meow example.cpp, 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 and file query meow example.cpp. Oh, that's weird. Rename file query meow example.cpp. It appears to be fixed in this build too. Okay, so once again we need to go and check out an earlier version and see if the bug repros in any of those. Meow example was deleted, you're right. Okay, we have a bug. We have a bug there. Let's try and do that again and see what happens. See if I can do that twice. Yeah, so doing that deletes it and never replaces it. Okay, I mean it doesn't crash anymore, which is good, but it does still delete the file to do that unless you explicitly resave the file afterwards, maybe? Not even then? I guess you just gotta trick it into thinking it's dirty first, and then it will. Yeah. Okay, so let's look through the code for rename file query and see what's happening there. Alright, so we construct a new file name by just taking the old file name off and putting the new file name on. And then we're going to call save buffer. Then we delete the old buffer and create the new one only if that save goes through. So what's supposed to happen in this case is the save is supposed to fail. And that should be happening if the thing we're saving to... Oh, that's not true. The save shouldn't fail. It just overrides the file. So it correctly overrides the file with the same name because Windows will match files without case sensitivity. And therefore it'll say, aha, the file you're referring to is this one. It'll write out whatever you had in your buffer into that file, then it'll delete the file. So what we actually need to do is once we save the buffer, we need to call create buffer first and make sure it's not the same buffer we had in the first place. That's what we need to do. Okay, let's see. So this is under base commands. Line 1217. Okay, I think that will do. So Yeah, so this is the one that should be the most crashy, is the only one where I actually saw that crash reliably, and just spamming it isn't helping. Anyway, see if that fixes anything though. Meow intrinsics. Meow intrinsics. There we go. Okay. So that one is solved at least. Shit. How do I undetach my head? Sorry for the tiny text. You've already seen this once. Okay, how is my head still detached? Does get reset head not do anything? Okay, now I'm pissed. Oh, that's a comment about this shit, not about that shit? Ugh. Ugh. Okay. One last time. If the new buffer exists and the new buffer ID does not equal the buffer ID, fix in rename file query that causes names files to be deleted when the New name fails to create a new file. Okay. I don't know much about the WinDebug preview trace debugger for Windows 10. I might check it out. There's no way I'm switching this computer over to Windows 10. Sooner or later I'm going to unplug it from the internet and forever store it in the corner of a room where I keep it extra safe. I have a Windows 10 laptop that I might try it on, where I do a lot of stuff too. But I want to keep this on Windows 7 for all of time and disconnect it from the internet before Microsoft stops supporting Windows 7, probably. Cool, that'll be nice. I don't really know which type of problem you're referring to. Alright, so we've tracked down a couple of problems. Let me pull up my to-do list. So there's this little bug right here that was like renaming a file to a case-insensitive equivalent name on Windows deletes the file. But let's try that and see if we can reproduce a bug. And goobar tab. I mean, that's correct behavior right there, right? I think it's correct behavior. If you don't mind, I'm going to track down real quick in my emails off to the side who set that in. Get more information about what they thought was a bug, because maybe I need more information than they thought to repro it. I would disagree with the assertion that all you need to debug a bug is the stack trace to the crash. I'm not sure what a full trace is, but if that's just the stack trace to the crash, that is definitely not enough in all cases. That's like a rank 1 bug can be fixed that way, but like there's all kinds of bugs where what you really need is you have a loop that's like that loop occurs 100 times and it's 100 iterations of a numerical process, and what you really need to see is the numerical state of the system at all 100 iterations, because those 100 iterations are kind of the stack you care about. But from the code's perspective, those 100 iterations aren't 100 calls into each other. The first 99 disappeared when you do the 100th one. Like, you only ever one iteration exists at a time, and so you'd have to be manually stashing that data to reconstruct those. Oh, if it's something more like being able to reverse, like a debugger like could do a thing, and this could be doing that thing where it's like you're seeing a crash, and so you go back to a state that was sort of like marked, like you have as you're running, the thing can like stop at a spot and go, okay, grab all the locals, all the globals, like a bunch of stuff. I don't know if it would be like grab the entire address space. I mean, it could be like that, but that would certainly not work for debugging real-time applications then, usually. But if it's like, oh, you just have this like big loop and it's going to automatically put in a couple points where it can remember the entire state of the frames, and then you can replay at least that much of it, that would still be pretty useful. Like if the if you could explain to me how you solve the problem of capturing the entire address space, that's the only part I don't really see. I guess what you could do is you could say, look, for each given virtual address page, all we need is a most recent copy of the page. Then to go to point X in the code, like time T I should say, you then look at, well, where of all the currently active pages, I don't know, that's pretty complicated. Yeah, send me info. I'm curious how much of the state it recreates, basically. Okay, let me track down. See, the reason I don't think you can just say, here's the initial state, here's the code, and here's the series of all the events that go to, like, all the syscalls, basically, and their results, because I'm not sure, like, I'm not sure how that helps me when I'm trying to jump to time t. I would still have to play from the beginning, run the source, like, I need to see how it represents time and how I put a breakpoint in a specific point in time, and how I distinguish where I want to, like, basically how do I communicate to it where I want to actually investigate. It's probably just like a step backwards thing, but if it's like stepping backwards, it must have a local checkpoint that's not as far away as the very initial state. And if it's grabbing states after the initial state, that seems like it must be doing some complicated delta compression all the time or something, and then making, I don't know. I'm curious to see it. You're saying it uses a query syntax, so you have to like script your debug breakpoint? I understand that you query where you want, but that's how the current debugger works, by where you query what you want. You say, I want to see what the state of the program looks like when it reaches this line of code. And so the way I communicate to the machine is I say, here's the line of code I care about, now show me what happens there. But for something like this to be unique and distinct from this, I would need to be able to say something like, the line of code, this line of code where I got called by this other function and the second time it happens. Right? Like the second time the outer function gets called, break on this breakpoint here. It could also be the second time this function gets called from this outer function, break on this line. There's so many things it could be, and I'm curious what you mean by it's a query. Yeah, I can tell you guys are not talking about exactly the same thing. Don't worry. Anyway, what should we work on? We're working on this tab thing, and I'm looking for who. Alright, someone had a complaint about the listers for files. Okay, the CPU problem has been solved for a long time, and I've just been sitting on it. No. I can't find this in my emails. It could be on the forums. How dark is it? Is it too dark to see my face? Yeah, it has gotten too dark. Alright, I'm just gonna hide my face because I don't have a light in this room anymore. And um, the dark face looks really weird. Eh, it's good enough. Alright, quick run through the Handmade Network 4coder forums to see if anyone was reporting this bug there. Let's see. Alright. I'm going to do a quick run through of the forums and add new bug stuff here because I forgot to collate this part earlier. Okay, nothing in this one. That one's fixed. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's pretty serious. So, oops, get out of here. Really long single line wrapped 300,000 lines. Ish. Okay. What else have we got? Okay. Opening large projects. optimize lookup in file track data structures. Got to do that still. Let's see. There's a lot to go through here. Alright, that one is taken care of. That one's taken care of. That one isn't a bug. Font's not rendering at all. That one's coming along later. This one's already fixed. Okay. Alright, so that one I need to add to my to-do list. Mac German keyboard layout. Okay. This might be the tab thing I was looking for. Hi Pythno, don't know how long I missed your comment, but thanks. I recommend not updating. Updating is always a mistake, and 4coder is no exception to that rule. You were here quite a while ago. Sorry about that. Jim, was Iceberg's bug the one I fixed earlier? I was trying. I couldn't reproduce it. I couldn't reproduce it, but I was only testing it on the very newest 4coder, where I've fixed some other stuff with file notifications anyway. But I'm not convinced that I'm not convinced that anything I did would be related to his problem. I honestly have no idea what's going on with his problem, but it seems like either his VirtualBox setup or something else, maybe some program that happens when he boots his VirtualBox inside the virtual machine, something is touching all of the files, touching their security attributes, touching their creation dates or something. Something weird that is not obvious, and that's probably why he's getting those, is my guess. I mean, the operating system is sending notifications, basically, is what it seems like. I just don't know how to figure out which notifications need to be ignored for his case. Like, it's probably one of these flags. I'll show you. So it's down here. We have. Oh, this is too small. Whoops. Sorry about that. Um, so like if there's a change in the security, if there's a change in the creation date, if there's a change in the last access, which I don't know what that means exactly, but that could just mean that reading the file in another program triggers this, in which case that flag probably shouldn't be there, right? But I've also had issues where if I didn't include all the flags, I missed them. And so it might just be that I need to do this for him, and that the rest are all I need. I'm not sure. I could have a thing that's like a log that says which of these when you're on Windows, which of these most recently occurred for each file, or keeps an order of them all. That's what I should do for him, is I should build a log for this. Okay. To-do list. But you get some odd behavior when filtering the list in some, not all circumstances. It seems that the keyboard input lags way behind the display sometimes. It is almost as if it is lagging behind, but will respond immediately as soon as the enter key is pressed. This is on Linux 64 build, by the way. I'll try to capture some video if I can. It's really intermittent though, so it may be difficult. Weird, I haven't used the Linux build a lot. Perhaps something is going wrong with the repaint or animate flags or something. Okay. Linux animate bug lister. Okay. Okay, Jim has a good question. Have you thought about leaving them all on and just hashing buffers for actual changes? Yes, I've thought about that a lot. So there's a couple things you could do. If you trust creation times, which you have no good reason to do, but if you trust file creation times, you could just say, like, we're going to compare to those. Whether or not you're comparing to creation times or doing a hash of the file, you do have the problem that you have to open a file on disk to do this, which is kind of a slow operation. If you, in the past, what 4coder used to do was every time it woke up and iterated, the way it figured out which files were changed was by not actually change notifications at all. I looked at the change notification API and was like, no, I don't like it on any operating system. And so instead what I did was just iterate all the buffers, and for each one check their creation time that we've stashed in memory to the creation time that's on disk, and if the not creation time, the last modified time on disk. And if the last modified time is more recent than our stashed time, we would just say we were out of sync. Big problem with that was that you had to do that for all the buffers all the time, and that was very slow. Like if you had 200 buffers open, 4coder became super slow. So then I switched it to like a scanning method where it would scan, like it would limit itself to like 20, and then it would do 20, and then the next time it stepped it would do another 20. But I didn't really like that because people would often notice that their thing wasn't updating, and then like they'd be like, what's going on? They'd start moving their mouse around to figure out what's going on, and then it would fix. And so even if there is a delay, it should be a delay that resolves itself in a predictable amount of time that doesn't require user input to wake you up and resolve. Plus, I didn't like the idea of always constantly doing some fixed overhead amount of work for what should have been notifications that only came in. Like if I have n notifications and m files to watch, and m is much larger than n, then I really want the thing that requires on amount of traffic, not om amount of traffic. So that's why I decided to switch to notifications. Notifications were as much of a pain in the ass as they looked like when I was researching them. And they still are, I guess I should say. They are as much of a pain in the ass as I expected them to be. I just don't know how to not include them. But I'm pretty much to the point where I feel like I have to be super extra careful to really make sure I'm getting all the notifications on every operating system. Like you have to just, like, if you don't beg for it, it won't give you notifications in every scenario, and then you end up getting notifications in bad scenarios. And so then the only way to make it correct, I think, is to go back to, once you've got a notification that something has changed, you check its sync time or something. But I didn't really like the sync time thing because you can also just arbitrarily reach into a file and change its creation date anyway. So you could hash it, and you have to load the file in at a certain time to hash it, and anytime you save it you have its entire contents. You could hash it again then. Only problem with all that is you have to, like, for a large file you have to do the entire file I/O for the entirety of the file. Like you have to I/O the whole thing, hash it, and then compare it to your hash. And even though the hash will speed up the comparison, nothing's going to speed up that I/O part, right? And I don't like that. So I'm not sure what I want to do. I'll probably go with create or last modified timestamps again as like a fallback. But there's another reason that gets complicated is you might imagine that it's like, you have to be careful when you're thinking about doing it with hashes, because it's possible for me to edit a file in my memory without saving it, and then for the file on disk to change as well. And that, in the mental model of 4coder lives by, that is the same as if I hadn't edited my file and I got out of sync. Basically, if there are changes on the disk that I'm not responsible for, that's always an exclamation point. And the reason for that is basically that someone else has made a change that they think is authoritative. Whatever you've got going on, that's fine, but your main priority should be to think about the fact that this happened, and are you sure you understand why? Have you prepared for that? But it's not so easy to handle that case when you're doing hashes unless you're careful about when you take a hash of the live version. Because if I edit something, I don't want to rehash it then. You only ever rehash your internal one, I guess, whenever you sync with the external one, the same way you would with timestamps. So I don't know. Maybe it's not that complicated, but I still don't think hashing, like, I'm still not a fan of like reading in the whole file. I mean, maybe you just compare the file lengths. Now you're looking for something that guarantees that they're different, not that they're the same. You know what I mean? Like, simply saying, oh, their file lengths are the same and the first 1K of the file is the same, therefore we're not going to treat it as a notification that it changed, is a bad idea, because we want to make sure to always get a notification when there's a change, and occasionally allow for a few notifications that are bogus. The problem right now is that we're getting too many, but we don't want to swing the pendulum too far the other way. We want to keep it in the spectrum of you get notifications a little bit generously. Yeah, so I don't know. Probably modify time. Most people don't directly modify the modify time. Probably I'll just do the log for now and see what happens. Okay, I've already read this. This doesn't have any bugs in it. Here we go. This could be the tab thing. Hi, I have noticed that the new release sometimes crashes when I try to open files. This happens if I try to use tab on the root of a drive, like open C without the slash. Open C : works. The old version simply does not list any folders or files. For me, it's crashing every time I launch 4coder from Windows Start menu and try to open a file. Oh, that's another person who had that bug. Yeah, I also tried running it with a debugger now. I get an access violation at line 72. Full file name is empty, so I guess that's a problem. Wow, a lot of people are hitting the start menu thing. I didn't even realize. Okay, so that's two right there. Windows Start menu and open file. Tab in open press file lister with text. Alright, I want to try that one first. I think that that is the same as that. No crash there. I just got a C file. I don't know. I think that that one might have been fixed with some other stuff I did. It's not on this list, but Casey reported a very similar bug like days after I shipped the build, and I fixed it like 1 or 2 weeks later, and so these reports probably came in after that. It shouldn't be either. James, I'm really wondering if it's just that there's too much in C Windows System 32 to parse, or if it's access issues. So access issues aren't... I've never ever seen it be access issues on the loading side, because all you're asking for is read permission. If you can't open it, then you just fail to open a buffer, and if you can open it, you get a buffer. The thing people notice with access issues is when they don't realize that they're on something read-only and they try to save it. But that's not a crash bug. I've never seen... It could be a crash bug that I've never seen before with access issues, but my guess is that it's similar to the opening large project bug. Might be the same thing. So we're going to track these two down next. First, we need to be able to launch 4coder from the start menu. So, how the hell do you guys even set that up for yourselves? I guess it's something like... Okay, that just gave me... That's fine. That didn't open me up and see system when system 32, whatever, right? How do you put it in the system, in the start menu, in such a way that it doesn't just turn out to be like a link to another location? Because that's what you're saying is happening, right? That it launches from here and doesn't have somewhere else to call its base? Aha, okay. Hey, that crashed. Ugh, there's never enough time to attach a debugger. Alright, here we go. Boom, boom, get this thing ready to go. Boom, boom. Debug. Attach debugger. Oh, come on. There we go. Alright, destination is a null string and the source is real. How did we get into this situation? It's an out of memory problem. Whose arena is this? This is a lister? Okay, yeah, this is just the problem with the listers getting too cheeky with yeah, let's just fix that. Let's just fix that. That's a dumb bug. There's no reason for that to be there. So, interactive opener new. File lister with refresh handler. Interactive open or new. Alright, so basically what I want to do is eliminate this one and always use this one, thereby forcing me to actually think about the arena size in all cases. So let's go down that road and see what it's like. See, this is all I get. Whenever I crash, I get this. And so if I don't hit the debug button on Task Manager soon enough, I don't get it. Okay, anyway, it might be under view details. I didn't see it. I do believe that I should be able to calculate the correct size in all cases. And the fact that I'm not is just me being lazy. Oh, maybe I can't do this in all cases. Give me a sec to sit down. Start thinking about this. Okay, this one's definitely just dumb. This one I could definitely do. Alright, let's try to figure this out. So, who calls begin integrated lister with refresh handler? Here we define it, and this is buffer list and file system list. The problem is that file system list doesn't have a fixed length. What do I want to do in that case? I mean, in every other case, I could make it work. Generate all buffers list, for instance. It's hard to say. So here's a question. What all does that arena actually get used for? If anytime it gets paired with a generate function, why doesn't the generate function allocate the arena then? Why does the arena get allocated on the state by the initialization of the state in that case? If we don't have a refresh, then the arena is just the memory we use to generate the nodes from the data structure that got passed into us. It never changes the data structure to find the nodes, and they're done. And the arena is just the memory that the state allocates to make sure it's got enough room. But what if the generate function is set, right? If there's a generator, then it could be different every time you generate it how much you need. Only at the time you call generate could you know how many you need, how many nodes you need, that is. Therefore, only at that point can you allocate the right amount of space. Hmm. So, in this case, for instance, each push on the arena is hidden behind this. So what to do? Pre-computing the correct size ahead of time is necessary if I do this. But the only way to do it ahead of time for a generate function would be to put it here, and it's getting passed in here. This would be a very major change to the structure of this thing. Another option is to pass in an allocator that can grow, so that it only fails when the system itself runs out of memory. Yet another option is to pass in a limited amount of memory, and if you run out, you stop listing things. That creates for us the problem that we then need to do windows, and if if you're scrolling down, you only push out the things that are actually going to be on the screen. That's what we should be doing. 5:16. This is almost 2 hours now. Alright, so I think what we've done in this investigation here of the start menu problem that showed up in 4029 and the opening large projects problem that showed up in 4029, both are related to these listers and the fact that I never went about answering the question, how do I limit the memory that actually gets used to what's on the screen? Right now what happens is when you make a lister, no matter how big the lister needs to theoretically be, it tries to do the whole thing. And that's just dumb for so many reasons. It takes up way more memory, way more time in every stage of the process. The only advantage it has is that it's very easy to get right. But that's not a good enough reason to keep doing it. So, I think the plan for today is to wrap it up and say tomorrow we will work on limiting the scope of the UI, like making a helper system that makes it easy to limit the scope of the UI things you push to the set of things that actually will fit on the screen where the screen current is. What makes this hard is that right here we don't have any notion of a screen, so I'm not actually sure how that would ever happen. When we added items to the lister, what are we actually doing? Great. Yeah, so when you add an item to a lister, the lister is just this list of things. It doesn't have any concept of the size or the window or anything like that. But we could introduce such a concept. All we would have to do is guarantee that any window we use abstractly in the lister layer is at least big enough to match any visual window that needs to show up. And then when we're adding items to a lister, yeah, that won't be too hard. We'll just say if you add an item to a lister, you can still add it, and it'll just get ignored until the first n items, because we said the window we want is from item number 50 to item number 100. And then that means that, well, we still want to think about the API, but that means we could, for instance, say, look, just don't ever push the memory for items 0 through 49 or any of the items after 100, and just ignore those. And if the user wants, they could be more efficient than that by figuring out how to skip the calls completely. We would want to think about what that does to the API. You probably have to pass in the index of each item as you set it up. But that's still okay too, I think. If the items don't come in order of their indexes, we would have to think about what that means. So maybe it's not okay, I don't know. You could also just have a thing that's like skip ahead, like, hey, I'm not going to bother pretending to send you items that I know you're skipping. Jim asks, is this related to the crash on compiler save that seemed to blame marker code? Nope, that was different. Unfortunately, that was yet another one of those cases where there were about 3 bugs that all appeared to come from the same actual mistake. And I only confirmed for one of them that I was fixing it when I fixed it. The others disappeared in my build. I'm pretty sure that they were caused by that, but it's so time consuming to go back and check every bug. Like, if I could... It's so confusing. So, thinking about the process of collecting bugs is kind of interesting, because you could say, like, why don't you collect bugs for 2 weeks and then collate them together and do them like, I think these are the same bug, and so you check them off, and you don't fix any of them, you just identify the cause of all of the bugs, and you mark each of them with their causes, and then you group them together by the ones that you think you can fix all at once, and then you implement the change and test all of the things that you thought should get fixed, and so on. So it would have the advantage of removing my uncomfortability with these phenobugs that disappear when you fix their genobugs type thing. But what happens in real life is, after those 2 weeks have gone by and you've collated your bugs and started working on it, a few days later someone else reports a bug that sounds a little different, and now the whole thing is thrown off. Because is that a different bug caused by a different mistake, or a different bug caused by the same mistake? Or is that like the same, just is that like a different, like a complete misunderstanding by the person, and you don't know what it is until you've investigated, and it's just time consuming. So I don't know. I don't know what those bugs were about, most of them, because they all disappeared after I fixed one little problem with markers that didn't even seem that related. The worst part is I actually fixed several little problems with markers that didn't seem related, and I don't know which specific one was causing it. Like, it's very nebulous, and I'm just crossing my fingers hoping at this point. But I haven't seen a crash like that on my build in like a month. Okay, I think I know what we need to do next time. We're going to implement a windowing system on the lister so that it can shrink its memory usage way down, and therefore not crash on cases where the size of the list is unknown ahead of time. So, see everyone later. Bye-bye.